And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, I am going to be talking about some of the league's most overrated players, in my opinion. Again, this list, most of this list is going to be my opinion. And some of this list is going to be taken from, an article from Bleacher Report. And I more or less agree with this article on some of the overrated players in the NBA. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about these players pretty briefly in this third segment. So let's just go right ahead and go into these players. The first player is, of course, Andrew Wiggins. He's been dubbed as one of the, the busts in the 2014 draft when he was selected number 1 overall by the Cleveland Cavaliers and was then traded over to Minnesota. And a lot of people, ever since he won that championship with the Golden State Warriors back in 2020, a lot of people have sort of thought that, his career, finally that makes up for all the things that he's done, right? Now, I will say this. He defended Luka Doncic. He was as well as humanly possible back in 2022. And he also gave Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown a lot of problems in the finals in that same year. And really, there's no chance that the 2022 Warriors were going to be able to win that championship if it had not been for Andrew Wiggins. I just want to say that right now. However, even after all of that, I still don't think that Andrew Wiggins has been the player that everyone thought he was going to be since they drafted him number 1 overall pick in 2014. So, obviously, Wiggins, he developed into a pretty nice three-point shooter, hitting 33% of his threes with the Timberwolves. But keep in mind, the 29-year-old has never once posted a true shooting percentage above the league average and has a negative career box plus minus, including 4 of his last 5 seasons in the red, and owns a 14.5 player efficiency rating when the league average is 15. And a one-time All-Star. That's another thing about him. He is a one-time All-Star. He has a lot of physical gifts. And he is the ideal frame of a two-way star, but he just hasn't developed into that player. And drafting him, again, he was drafted number 1 overall, and he was drafted number 1 overall to be a role player. I think that is just ridiculous. And the fact that he won a championship, it was oh my God, Andrew Wiggins, he did this, he did that. I think that's that overrates him just a little bit because, he was not the player that everyone thought he was going to be in the future. Now, another player that I don't have on this, that's not on this article, but in my opinion, has sort of become overrated, is Damian Lillard. Now, it's not because of what he did last year. I have a feeling that he's going to have a bounce-back year with the Bucks this year, but it's mainly just everyone's overall opinion on him. Now, Damian Lillard made the top 75 team. Now, let me remind you, top 75, the top 75 best players in basketball history. He made that list without winning a single NBA award aside from Rookie of the Year and the Bubble MVP and a couple of All-Star selections. Aside from that, he hasn't won any single major accolade for the NBA when he got ranked in the top 75. And people found out later that Kyrie Irving was supposed to be on the top 75 list, but was removed because of his controversies and stuff off the court. And I'm not saying that Damian Lillard isn't good. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that he's overrated. A lot of people, when Steph Curry was injured in, I believe, 2020, a lot of people were saying that Damian Lillard was better than Steph Curry. And a lot of people were saying that Damian Lillard had better range. He was a better shooter than Steph Curry. And when you get called a better shooter than Steph Curry, I'm sorry, you're overrated. And there's no way around it. And what makes it even funnier is that the year after, Steph Curry proved that Damian Lillard was overrated, but people still overrate him. And I just wanted to put him on this list because, again, he made top 75. He shouldn't have made top 75. And it should have been reserved for Kyrie. He's not a better shooter than Steph Curry. He's lucky to even be in that conversation. And he's not one of the best shooters all time. I'm sorry, I just don't see it. And next player that's on the Bleacher Report list is Nikola Vucevic. Now, the Bulls, they traded for Vucevic. He came from the Orlando Magic. He played pretty well for the Magic. He was expected to be a very important piece for Chicago. But the Bulls, along with everyone else, they really overrated Vucevic when they sent out Wendell Carter Jr., Otto Porter Jr., and a pair of future first-round picks to get him all the way back in 2021. Like the rest of the league, they were infatuated, by his reliable double-double averages and developing three-point shot. That was one of like the big reasons why he was like so interesting on the Magic. But like he wasn't really able to replicate that success from the Magic like he did on the Bulls. It's nice that his assist rate always hangs around the 90th percentile and he never turns the ball over, but he's essentially a huge usage offensive piece who can't score efficiently because he never draws fouls, doesn't shoot enough threes, and converts his low rate at rim attempts at a mitting clip, according to this article. So basically what the article is saying is that like he doesn't really convert as many shots around the rim as you would expect from a big man. And the 33-year-old's steady diet of mid-range jumpers is offensive poison, according to this article. And he's been a catastrophically negative force on defense in 3 of the last 5 years. In hindsight, the Bulls should have seen that last part coming, but in his final season with the Magic, their defensive rating plummeted by 8.2 points per 100 possessions when Vucevic was on the floor. At least the Bulls didn't throw good money after bad by handling him a 3-year, $60 million extension in the summer of 2023. But, you know, he's just like, that ended up happening. So it really just, he's been disappointing. He's been very, very disappointing according to not just according to the article, but in my opinion. Again, he was expected to be a very highly touted pick for the Chicago Bulls. Like, he was expected to help the Bulls make it to the playoffs, and that just really didn't happen all that much. Next player on this list is DeAndre Ayton. In my opinion, DeAndre Ayton is one of the laziest and one of the most spoiled athletes that this league has seen. His time on Phoenix, like, he was supposed to be the next big man for Phoenix, but he was so lazy and he didn't want to improve, and he was also a very jealous player for some reason. Like, he was upset at Devin Booker and like Chris Paul and Kevin Durant shooting more shots than him, like, which really confused me. Like, he was like, hey, y'all are shooting more than me, no fair, I don't want to be here anymore. Like, that was the attitude that he was giving, and it really confused me because it's like, are you serious? You want to take more shots? Like, really? It baffled me. But again, we don't technically really get to count DeAndre Ayton's rookie season because it falls outside the last 5 years, but no analysis of the center's overrated status would be complete without mentioning the fact that he was picked number 1 overall, ahead of Luka Doncic, by the way, and also SGA, and also Trae Young, and also Jaren Jackson, and also Mikal Bridges, and several other players. Yes, he was drafted over all of them. Ayton was overrated before he even played a single game in the NBA. And he was 3rd place in Rookie of the Year voting, averaging 16, 10, and 0.9 blocks, which showed that he had a lot of potential. He really did. But his production has never really been all that different from his rookie season, where he's averaged 16 points, 10 rebounds, and almost 1 block. He's never really done all that much to improve his game. And Ayton's high usage efficiency profile is a lot of Vucevic's, and except he's now nowhere near as good of a facilitator and is almost as allergic to drawing contact as Vucevic is. Ayton's refusal to dunk the ball or attack the rim is among the most maddening individual traits in the league. Despite good hands, quick feet, and plenty of lift, the 26-year-old has ranked in or above the 98th percentile in mid-range attempt frequency among bigs in each of the last 3 years. He loves shooting mid-ranges for some reason. Somehow the Pacers saw this profile and decided it was worth a maximum 4-year contract worth $133 million in July 2022. Clearly in asset preservation mode, the Phoenix Suns determined that was a number they needed to match. Following a trade to the Portland Trail Blazers last year, Ayton is now putting up similarly empty numbers in obscurity, where he'll continue to coast on his draft pedigree in counting stats. So basically, they're just saying that he's putting up a lot of stats in garbage time, and yes, he is the number one option for the Portland Trail Blazers, but again, this is a losing team, so what does it really mean? And next player on this list, and the next player that I think he should be number one on this list, but it's Ben Simmons. You guys already know how I feel about Ben Simmons. I despise him. I don't like him. I think he is one of the biggest wastes of talent that the NBA has seen ever, and that really goes a lot. Like, he was called LeBron James without a jump shot. That was how good he was, and he has barely played a single game since then. And, like, we're all at fault for Ben Simmons still landing on the list. Every time we, like, look at it, like, it's every single time we look at him in the offseason, we all think, oh, this is going to change. Oh, he finally knows how to shoot. Oh, this, oh, that. And then he just becomes the same player in an NBA game. He was, again, the number one overall pick. That makes 3 of the last players all number one overall picks, right? And the fact that he's been a number one overall pick and just hasn't lived up to that hype just goes to show you just how bad he really is and how overrated he's been. Even everyone knows that he's bad, and like, he's still on this overrated list, which just goes to show you just how bad he is. He was once a legit star. Back in 2019 and in 2020, he was an All-NBA third-teamer. He finished 4th in Defensive Player of the Year voting. The following season, he repeated as an All-Defensive first-teamer, checked in at number 12 in MVP voting, and climbed all the way up in 2nd for Defensive Player of the Year. The advanced metrics backed up the accolades, as well as he rated in the 94th and 92nd percentiles in dunks and threes catch-all estimated plus minus. And we all know what happened in 2021 when he played in the playoffs against the Atlanta Hawks and he couldn't shoot a single free throw. He couldn't hit a single free throw. He shot worse than Shaquille O'Neal from the line in the playoffs, which is really bad. Like, you really have to, like, pull something out of nowhere to make that happen. And a lot of Philly fans, they don't want to forget just how bad he was. Like, he's the big reason why, like, a lot of the Philly fans are probably the big reason why they don't like having these guards. But again, like, he really hasn't been that guy. Like, everyone thought that James Harden was bad. But like, Ben Simmons was bad. He was just bad. And speaking of James Harden, he's the last player on this list as one of the most overrated players. I'm very surprised that he's on this list because, again, while he might be overrated in the postseason, he's pretty well rated in the regular season. But again, given what he's done the last few years, I could see why, he's been dubbed as overrated. He's really not been the same player as he was on Houston, and a lot of people on Philly wanted you to believe that he was, but he ultimately just ended up crashing in the postseason like he always does. And that's one of the things that James Harden, that he does, that's a trend of his that not many people really want to admit. Every single year, he just doesn't play well in the postseason, and he cracks under the pressure. So that's all that I have for this list, and again, most of it was taken from Bleacher Report, but again, I did give my opinions on this list. So now we will go ahead and go into the 4th segment, where I talk about Anthony Edwards and his opinions on Michael Jordan. It's probably going to be a much shorter segment, given how much time I've spent on these 2 lists, but I'll go ahead and do that right after this short break, so be sure to stay tuned.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.